and we ask him to send his peace and blessings upon the last and final messenger and upon all those who follow his way. I mean, so Trump's back. And I have a question for the Latino, the Hispanic community. What happened? 50% of you all nearly voted for this guy. What happened? That's very interesting, right? A lot of youth. Trump's numbers grew 10 points in youth. Pretty insane. 14 million individuals who normally vote didn't vote this cycle. And the vast majority of those voters are Harris voters, very similar to what happened in Hillary's time. So Mr. Trump is back, and the community is very concerned. We, as Muslims, played a strategy, and that is we refused to endorse Harris until she gave us guarantees that her strategy in Palestine would be different and she would commit to ending the war and the genocide. She didn't do that. Trump played a different strategy. He went to Dearborn, the largest Arab and I think Muslim community in numbers in all of America, Dearborn in that area. He went there 16 times himself in person to try and win the vote of the Muslims there, to get their endorsement. And it worked. Now, even if he didn't get the endorsement, I mean, he got all the swing states, right? But a lot of Muslims were really pissed off at what our brothers and sisters in Michigan did. And so Muslims are pointing their fingers at one another. It's your fault, it's your fault. And the Harris, the Democrats are pointing their finger at us. It's because of you we lost. All of that is nonsense, right? But I watched the victory speech. Who watched the victory speech of Trump? Anyone see it? Yeah? You should watch it. We got a shout out, baby. Uncle Trump, the Donald. He said, I'd like to thank the Arab and the Muslim community. All right, so I got it twice. I got 2 shout outs, right? And I was like, yes. The whole speech, I'm sitting there listening. I hope he says something about Muslims. I hope he recognizes us. Why? Because Trump 1.0, a lot of Islamophobia rose in that time. Yeah, we got the free promotions and the commercials. A lot of people became interested in Islam. That's great, right? But it was a scary time. And so now we here are today, 2024, 8 years later, wondering, what's the Donald going to bring this time? He's changed a lot. He has a lot more political experience, but the man is unpredictable. What will he do? You do have, by the way, far-right individuals who have made a statement. Far-right individuals who were anti-Muslim before, but because Muslims engaged with these individuals, today or recently they made a statement after his victory saying that we thank the Muslim community for helping get Trump back into office. We recognize our shared values, and we have influence on Trump, and we will make sure that Islamophobia does not have a place in America, and that we will open up doors for Islam and Christian dialogue. We really don't know what's going to happen. But where I want to zero in is what I was personally experiencing while I was watching Trump's speech. It was about 30 minutes, right? A little bit short for his taste. I'm sitting there listening, hoping he says something about Islam and Muslims. Why? Because I was thinking maybe if he said something positive about us, then the white supremacists and these, vicious people will lay off us a little bit. And he did say something, and maybe it will help, right? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But that's not the point. What will end up happening is not the point. The point is, why did I feel a need to hear Trump say something about us? Why was I reassured after he said it? And this is where we begin today. And I draw our attention to the 33rd chapter of the Quran, the chapter of the trench, which revolves around a moment in the life of the Prophet and the companions where the Muslims in Medina were besieged, surrounded, completely cut off by 2 primary factions. The Arabs, the Arab tribes, led by Quraysh, and the Jewish tribes who were in Medina at that time. They came together to surround the Muslims in an effort to finish them off. And this moment in the life of the companions was so scary that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally describes their emotional state. He says, right, وَإِذْ زَاغَتِ الْأَبْصَارُ وَبَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرَ وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the emotional state, the psychological state of the believers when this was happening. He said, from how afraid you were, you couldn't see straight anymore. Your hearts were pounding in a way where it was as though they could feel it in their throats, right? And they were shaken, a violent shaking. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in that moment, you were tested. You were tested with a great test. Now, our situation now is not that extreme, but there are some similarities here, some parallels, and that's how we get inspired by the Quran. We see the commonalities, we see the overlap, we see the parallels. And then we are better able to pinpoint, okay, where am I going to get guidance from the Quran in regards to what I need to deal with now? The fact of the matter is the Democrats are very upset with us, and they wrongfully so. Had Muslims all voted for them, they still would have lost. But, you know, you pick on someone, you don't want to take the blame. Oh, it's their fault, right? The Democrats are very upset. The far left is very upset with us. A lot of vicious comments. And to what extent can we really trust the Republicans and the far right? We're surrounded, man. What do we do now? And in light of this, the chapter begins by saying, Ya ayyuhan nabi, ittaqillaha wa la tuta'il kafirina wal munafiqin. There are three primary verses that's going to give us guidance on how we deal with our situation now. A situation where there's a lot of uncertainty. When the moment of the trench was happening, there was a lot of uncertainty. They were being surrounded, right? We're kind of being surrounded now. Who's our ally? Who's going to protect us, really? And you know, you have the situation, we're in it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by saying, "O Prophet," when Allah talks to the Prophet, He's talking to us by extension, because we are the followers of the Prophet. And so whatever Allah tells the Prophet, He's telling us by extension, because we are meant to follow Him. So He's talking to each and every one of us. You have a situation, a lot of uncertainty, you are shaken, you don't know what's going to happen. There are powerful individuals who are very upset with you right now, and there are powerful individuals who simply don't like you. What do we do in all of this? Well, what I was hoping for was a shout out, thinking that, you know, Trump will protect us. Maybe if he says something, he'll protect us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, don't you dare do that. Don't you dare do that. Instead of me sitting, listening, and hoping, putting my trust or my heart, hoping that Trump will say something, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you should have had taqwa of Allah. Ittaqillah. Have taqwa of Allah. In other words, be conscious of Allah. Be conscious. Be thinking of Him whenever you're dealing with a circumstance. And so when I was watching the video, I should have been thinking, oh Allah, bring the best out of this. Oh Allah, this is your qadar. Because Allah clearly says in the Quran, He gives power to whom He wills, He takes it away from whom He wills. Had Allah wanted to, Harris would be there right now. Had Allah wanted to, you know, Trump could have been assassinated in the 2 attempts. If Allah wanted to, a lot of things could have happened. But Allah wants this to happen. And no, this isn't the, you know, the very lame, you know, divine, you know, God chooses who the leaders are. That's not what I'm saying here. But we do appreciate the fact that Allah is the supreme power. And Trump cannot do anything except that Allah gives him permission to do it. Just like the Pharaoh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Musa and his brother Harun, Moses and Aaron, don't be afraid of the Pharaoh. Don't be afraid of the Pharaoh. I am with you. I am with you, so be conscious of me and constantly think of God and remember God. Pharaoh can't do anything. The Pharaoh can't do anything except by my permission. I promise you protection, he tells them. So go and do your thing. Now, of course, we don't have that guarantee with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're just people, right? We're just believers of the 21st century. But the idea is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when there is a power struggle, when there are powerful people who don't like you, What do you resort to? And what we resort to is consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this word is very beautiful. I don't remember if I've already explained it to you, but I'll explain it again. When asked about what is consciousness of God, what does that really mean? One of the companions explained it in the following way. He gave us an image. He said, being conscious of Allah, having taqwa of Allah is like being in a field of thorns. Being in a field of thorns. As a human being, we are wired in a way where we avoid any and all inconveniences and pain, no matter how insignificant it may be. This is how we're wired. And so naturally, when you see a field of thorns, you have to cross it. What do? You sit there looking at every single step. You calculate, where am I going to step next? And you don't just calculate the next step. You calculate the next 20 steps. Because, okay, there might be a route here, but it ends over there. Okay, what? You're thinking ahead. And you're thinking with all of your consciousness. You're aware. And what's incredible about this explanation is that when you study leadership and leadership models, they tell you if you want to be a leader, there are certain key elements that you need to determine in order for you to properly lead other people. You first need to know where your goal is, what your goal is. And then you need to know what your landscape is, so that then you can devise a route to get to your goal. That's precisely how taqwa is being described. Be conscious, be aware, be awake. Because the time when evil gains most grounds is the time where good people are not paying attention. They're simply not paying attention. There was a time where the Muslim community in America was not paying attention. It was before 9/11. We weren't paying attention to the non-Muslims, meaning we weren't going out there making ourselves known. Everybody fled to their mosques, and that's it. We weren't paying attention to the fact that there are so many wonderful Americans with good hearts who, if Islam is introduced to them, they will be one of our brothers or sisters. We weren't paying attention to that. We weren't paying attention to politics. It was all like, whatever. We really don't have a say here. It doesn't really matter. And let's just be off the grid. 9/11 happened. Allah put us front and center of that grid. And we have continued to be front and center of that attention till today, 23, 24 years later. It's truly incredible. We weren't paying attention. And so today, as American Muslims, we have to live our lives, deal with the scenario with taqwa of Allah, being conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that means we seek our protection. We seek our guidance. We seek our strategies from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're awake. We're not naive. Trump gave us a shout out. I mean, maybe it'll do something for us. Maybe it won't. But I'm not going to wait to find out. Nor am I going to rely on Trump's shout out. Honestly, shame on us if we need a non-Muslim, with all due respect to all non-Muslims, but shame on us if we, who claim to believe in Allah, who claim to have the book of guidance and light, to claim to follow the best man ever to walk this earth, and then feel the need for protection from someone other than our own community, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, this is no disrespect to non-Muslims, and I'm not saying we don't build alliances with non-Muslims. No, that is part of the strategy. For those who overlap in our beliefs, in our values, and there is room to work with them in order to, make a better America, then let's go ahead and do that, whether they're on the right or the left, Republican, Democrat, conservative, or liberal. That is how Muslims think. But while we pursue that, our hearts are completely attached to Allah. And our hearts are thinking, our minds are thinking, okay, I'm conscious of Allah. What does Allah want me to do? And so the verse continues and tells us what Allah wants us to do. And what He wants us to do is وَلَا تُطَعِ الْكَافِرِينَ وَالْمُنَافِقِينَ. Don't obey the disbelievers and don't obey the hypocrites. Who's your obedience towards? If I want to truly gauge the level or the extent to which I'm being impacted by this Quran, how much have I truly absorbed this religion, this book? How much am I truly influenced by the words of God? I would assess the following. To what extent am I influenced by other than God? This is the question I'm going to ask myself. To what extent am I influenced by other than God? To what extent are my decisions influenced by other than God? To what extent are my aspirations influenced by other than God? To what extent are my dreams influenced by other than God? To what extent are my emotions aroused by other than God? To what extent is my worldview influenced by other than God? Because this book came to free humanity from being enslaved by the creation to being freed by the Creator. This is what the religion is. And so one of the primary points of this freedom, as per the Islamic definition of this term, is who do you obey? And so throughout the Quran, constantly, dozens of times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, obey Allah and obey His Messenger. Obey Allah and obey His Messenger. Obey Allah and obey His Messenger. So many times. Why? Because that's our freedom, baby. That's our strength. That's our empowerment. Because something we can guarantee ourselves is that when we obey God and His Messenger, God and His Messenger have our best interests at the forefront. Because God gets nothing out of what we do. Had all of humanity been the most pious person imaginable, it wouldn't increase God's kingdom. God is going to be more perfect as a result of that. And conversely, if all of humanity had the heart of the most corrupt individual ever to walk this earth, that wouldn't decrease God's perfection at all. It's not for Him, it's for us. That's freedom right there. And of course, the messenger was sent by God only to do what God commanded him to do. And so by extension, the prophet, as we see through his actions, what he did, his guidance, his advice, it was all for us. And Abu Hurairah, one of the great companions, he said this so beautifully. After the prophet passed away, and the Muslims became increasingly strong and wealthy and prominent and had such a high culture, Abu Hurairah went and said, the Prophet ﷺ dedicated his life and died with nothing. And here you are today enjoying the fruits of his efforts. He's not criticizing the believers. He's taken an opportunity for the believers to love the Prophet more and to understand why we obey the Prophet, peace be upon him. Because that's our freedom right there. Do not obey other than Allah and His Messenger. Not Trump, not Harris, not Democrats, not Republicans. We won't be influenced by you. We will influence you. Because that's our legacy right there. That's why God sent the prophets, to be followed, not to be influenced, to be sources of light, not to be, politicians who will sacrifice here for some gains there, who will, be inconsistent in their values in order to make more money or whatever it is. Don't obey the disbelievers. And when I say disbelievers here, let me be very clear here. The context of this chapter is the powers at play. The powerful people. Don't obey them. I'm not saying don't obey your parents if your parents are non-Muslims, but don't obey them if they tell you to do that which is displeasing to God. That's the condition right there. I'm talking more specifically about those in play, those in power. They will come to you and they will say, hey, just embrace liberal values and you will be part of us. We're not interested. Or, the conservatives might come and say, be racist. Look at these black folk. They're the problem here, right? And some of these people in power might be known racists. We better dare not see a Muslim engaging with those people because we have values. We have values. And those values were made very, very clear in the last famous sermon of the Prophet. An Arab's not better than a non-Arab. And a non-Arab's not better than an Arab. A white is not better than a black, and a black's not better than white. You're all from Adam, and Adam's from dirt. We have to be consistent in our values. Politics is a very dark game. And a lot of people fall into that darkness. They sacrifice their values. They sacrifice what they mean. And I think a lot of people, especially the black community, feel this with Obama. Right? He came in with ideas. He came in with whatever. This man is a black man. He's going to make the lives of black people a little bit better. It didn't get so far, did it? So who's your hope in? Our hope is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our hope is in the fact that we as American Muslims have taken stance after stance based on our values. And we should be very proud of that. And I am very hopeful and optimistic that Allah will reward our stances because we made sacrifices, man. People lost their jobs because they refused to wear rainbow-colored masks. People have lost their jobs because they spoke out in favor of Palestine. People are doxxed now. Our young ones are doxxed now, limiting their opportunities because they spoke out for Palestine. We should be proud of that because we did it based on our values. And even the Muslims who had a different strategy for this election, those who went green, those who went blue for Harris, and those who went for Trump, if you listen to all of their justifications for their positions, you'll find that all of them go back to what they think is in line with our values. In line with our values. Some people said, we will support Palestine by not endorsing Harris. Let's go green. Some people said we'll support Palestine because Harris is going to do less evil there than Trump. And some people said Trump has promised to end the war. That's why we're endorsing him. It all goes back to the same thing. And we should be very, very, very keen and very aware of that. Be conscious of that. You are most welcome to disagree with the strategy. And clearly, not all of them are right. One of them is going to be more correct than the other. But we have to appreciate the fact that it all goes back to our values. We're aligned in our values. And that's power right there. Boy, we Muslims in America are truly are a menace. We are a global menace. Right? We are a global menace. We do what we believe in. We do based on our values. And we do it accepting the risks. Now, let's be very honest. America does provide us with a lot of freedoms that other places don't. And this is nowhere near a perfect country. And there are some serious problems when it comes to systemic racism and, people in power and the increasing inequality, economic inequality and whatnot, serious challenges. But man, it's these challenges that made us people who say we only obey Allah and His Messenger. We will keep doing it over and over and over and over again. We have no loyalty to political party. We have no loyalty to person in power. Our loyalty is to Allah and His Messenger. Don't obey those in power. Obey Allah and His Messenger. And especially be careful of the hypocrites. Especially be careful of the hypocrites. Who are these hypocrites? These are the people who are within our community, who don't have our values in mind, who don't have our best interests in mind. They either are fake Muslims who seek to use that cover to harm us, or there are people who have their own personal interests in mind and are willing to sacrifice the entire American Muslim community in order to make gains. There are people like this. Be very careful. And there are certain hallmarks that really represent these people. No, it's not who did they vote for. It's not who they voted for. It's not who they're trying to be in conversation with. It's not the people who are part of the system and trying to do good within the system. And it's not the people who are always making problems for those inside the system. These are the people who will take uncertain times and use it to bash large groups of Muslims. These are the hypocrites. These people. Those who will take opportunities, who will capitalize on moments to attack institutions of our community, who will attack broad people, right? Broad amount of Muslims, calling them, oh, you guys are this, you guys are that. That's exactly what they tried to do in this moment of the trench. From within, we're doomed. God's promise, the promise of God and His Messenger were fake, they were false. They tried to demoralize the Muslims, and this is the second hallmark. The naysayers, the people who instill pessimism in the hearts of Muslims, the people who instill fear in the hearts of Muslims, uncertainty in the hearts of Muslims, this is a hallmark of hypocrites. Now, I don't mean anybody who behaves this way is like this, 100% hypocrite, but that's definitely hypocritical behavior. Don't listen to those fools. Listen to the people who lift you up. Listen to the people who, in times of uncertainty, they will smile and they'll say, good is to come. Don't be naive about it. But the fact of the matter is, in this moment of the trench where so many people thought this is the end of the Muslim project, the Islamic project, the Prophet was always seen with a smile on his face. And when the news came to him that things are going to get even worse, his response was, inshallah, the faraj, the way out is near. He was optimistic. He improved morale. He didn't demoralize people. He instilled optimism. He didn't instill pessimism. Don't obey the hypocrites. Be careful. And they're very easy to spot if you know the signs, but very easy to fall prey to if you don't know the signs. Who are the people who bash the Muslims, put Muslims down? That's hypocritical behavior. Who are the people who demoralize the community? That is hypocritical behavior. Now, I understand you'll have uncles who are always talking this way, right? I'm not saying go to them and say you are a hypocrite and whatnot, but that is hypocritical behavior. You might even find people on the pulpit, right? We don't want that stuff. Muslims, they instill morale in the community. Don't obey the hypocrites. And then continuing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتَّبِعْ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. The fact of the matter is, we live in a country that is very complex. The political scene is very complex. We can't do it alone. This is a reality. We cannot do it alone. We need to have strategic alliances. We must interact with people who don't entirely align with our values. So how do we make this less complicated? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, follow what I given you in the Quran. Follow the guidance of the Quran. The Quran doesn't often go into very nuanced details. It doesn't often address complex issues. But what it does give us is the clear red lines. Hey, you see these things? Be careful of them. Don't pass them. Don't you dare go into that realm. And there are certain things that we Muslims today need to understand. This is a red line. We will not cooperate with an individual. We will not build a relationship with an individual who is guilty of these things. I mentioned one of them, that's racism. No, we won't be with people who are racist. We will debate them. We'll try and change their mind, although probably not going to happen. We'll try and change their mind, but it will be made clear to the broader American people, we are not a racist community. This is a red line. And that we value, and we need to work on this a lot, we value anyone who identifies as a Muslim, irrespective of their ethnic background, their racial background, or their gender. We won't be seen with people who don't endorse that, because our Prophet made it clear to us, as I just mentioned, an Arab is not better than a non-Arab, and non-Arab is not better than an Arab. A white isn't better than a black, and a black isn't better than a white. We're all from Adam, and Adam's from dirt. So this is a red line. Be very careful of this. Another thing is, we will not make alliances with people who oppress others, even if the ones being oppressed are non-Muslims. We will not. I mean, the prophets, let alone the last and final messenger, came to free people from oppression. They spoke out against oppression. They spoke out against the ailments, the illnesses of their society, which were systematic ways of oppressing certain segments of the community. With Nuh alayhi salam, with Noah, it was a type of caste system. They said, oh, Noah, why would we follow you when your followers are of the lowest class? And Nuh had a response to that. I will not leave these people. I will not leave these people. They have followed me, and whoever follows me is important, regardless of their social class. You had, for example, Ad, that civilization with the Prophet Hud. Their social ailment was arrogance. They would go around and they would just harm people left and right, militarily speaking. And Hud spoke out against that. With, for example, Shu'aib and Midian, it was financial corruption. He spoke out against that. And so we Muslims, we will not stand with people who oppress others, whether those might be within our country, a segment within the country, or in other populations, Muslim or not. So we won't make alliances, we won't build friendships with individuals who are clearly oppressing. That's a red line. Another very big red line is our family values. Our family values. Family is incredibly important. What's very interesting about this chapter in the Quran, the majority of this chapter is about family issues, which I find very interesting, incredibly interesting. And I scratch my head and think, why is that the case? Why is that the case? And maybe I haven't fully thought through it. And maybe there are more lessons than what I'm about to tell you, at least initially. And that is, when the family unit is strong, society is strong. When the Muslim family unit is strong, we'll be stronger politically. We won't need to build alliances outside of our community, except that which is strategic and merited. We won't have to worry about external threats because within we're one body. Maybe that's the case, right? So our family values, we will never embrace family values that go against our religion. It's not going to happen. And no, this doesn't mean we look down upon people, we deny people their human rights, or that we completely shun a community that maybe needs our help, maybe could use what we have to offer, right? So family values is another one. Follow what the Quran tells you, and you will find guidance in terms of who exactly we spend time with and who are people we won't spend time with. Now, of course, the red lines are more than just 3, but these are 3 for the sake of time that I have provided with you now. And then finally, once we kind of have a vision, we understand the goal, we've laid out the landscape, and we plotted a route to that goal, it's time to move. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ وَكِيلًا. Put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah is enough for you. We Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intentionally often puts us in situations where there's a lot of uncertainty. It could be political, it could be personal, in your personal lives. Where is this really going to go? It could be your financial situation. Where is this really going to go? Even if right now you're very stable, as Muslims, we acknowledge the reality that can change overnight, as it changed with the Prophet Job, right? He was very well-to-do. He had a very large family. He had his business partners. He was as stable as you can imagine, only to lose that because of an illness. The Muslim acknowledges that there are a lot of uncertainties. What's going to happen with a new Trump president, a new Trump term, is very uncertain. Where are we going to go from here is very uncertain. What tomorrow looks like is very uncertain. What America is going to look like in the next few years is very uncertain. But don't be boggled down by this. Tawakkal ala Allah. Put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once you have devised that plan and you've thought it through, don't make the mistake a lot of people make and just say, well, maybe I didn't consider this, maybe I didn't consider that. No, you've done your job, you've done your work, you've consulted the experts in this regard. Make a decision, put your trust in Allah. And what putting your trust in Allah essentially means is, if you have made the right decision, Allah will help you in that decision. But if you made the wrong decision, or there's a decision that's actually better, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put things in your path that will divert you from your initial route to that other route. Put your trust in Allah. Make that decision. فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. This is what Allah tells the Prophet, and He tells us, if you have made a decision, again, after appropriate consultation and appropriate consideration, put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, when you study the life of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and you look at how his strategies, the Prophet didn't think, like, he didn't have this 50-year strategic plan. You know how companies, they have like a 50-year strategic plan, right? And they put tens of thousands of dollars into devising that strategic plan. Nothing haram about that, right? But the Prophet never did that. For him, it was like, a few months ahead, maybe, a few weeks ahead, maybe. Because his plan was, put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is coming and is providing me with the guidance. I can put my trust in Allah that when something needs to be done, He will show me that one way or another. For the Prophet, it was through revelation, through the angel Gabriel. For us, there are different venues which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us guidance. Don't overthink things. You have a decision, make the decision, and then put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ وَكِيلًا. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sufficient for you. And subhanAllah, you know, again, you track the past 20 years of our experience here in America. It's been nothing short of uncertainty after uncertainty. 9/11 was a very uncertain time. October 7th, a very uncertain time. Trump 2016, very uncertain. Trump 2024, very uncertain. And it seems like he's going to have all the branches of power on his side, right? Look, we made a decision as an American Muslim community. We're not going to endorse Harris. We made that decision understanding the risks, but we made it for the right reason. We made it for the right reason. And look, it might not have been the best decision. We Muslims aren't perfect. It may not have been the best decision. But the way Allah engages the believers is that if they do it for the right reasons, He will make a lesser decision, a less good decision, become the best decision through His own, through His own plotting and planning. Subhanahu min ilah. Tawakkal ala Allah. Put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, for many of you here, making the decision to become a Muslim was probably extremely difficult. What is going to happen? You had no idea. And there's no clear formula. Right? There's no set parameters that, if you become a Muslim, this is exactly what's going to happen. Everybody has a different experience. How you got to this point, you all have different experiences. But one thing you all share is that when you saw it was the right decision to make, you just had to jump. You had to jump. That's tawakkul right there. Embrace that. Embrace that moment. Because if Allah wants good for a person or for a community, He will help them develop the various spiritual elements of their relationship with Allah, with Him, so that they become stronger believers. And tawakkul is one of the key elements of our relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Man, it's been 2 decades of needing to trust Allah. And in hindsight, we've done a good job. That doesn't mean we've always made the best decisions, but it's always turned out in our favor. So continue to do what we have been doing and continue to try and improve on what we have been doing. Don't obey the people in power, and especially not those who are trying to create division within the community and demoralize the community. You have a book that's meant to free you from needing anyone other than Him. It gives you the red lines that if you stay within, you're going to be just fine. And you will win the hearts of people, because that's essentially our primary goal. And put your trust in Allah, and the one who puts their trust in Allah will never be let down. Of course, after putting due diligence. So I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the best of what's to come. And may He always give us the courage and the resolve and the patience and the steadfastness to stick to our values and to never stray away from our values, no matter what that means. And we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put our trust in Allah, that He will reward us and give us based on our attempt to maintain these values. And I hope that whenever we make a less than best decision, that He turns that decision into the best possible decision. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.
Please give it up for dear Shaykh Tarik Atta. All right, I feel the questions are coming. I just feel them. I feel like comments, questions online here. Definitely some comments and questions here as well. So I really appreciate it, Shaykh Tarik. Thank you so much for leading this discussion. So what we do now, of course, is we'd like to open up the floor for questions, comments, things of that nature per the topic, or any general questions. Is that okay as well, yeah. Shaykh Tarik? So if you didn't get a chance to come Friday Coffee with the Shaykh, this is your opportunity as well to ask Shaykh Tarik Coffee with the Shaykh on Sunday, inshallah. So I see Sister Yuki, and then we'll come over to Sister Rhonda, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
barakatuh.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at the beginning you said that the Surah 33, there were 3 verses that's especially relevant to the current situation. Can you tell me which verses these are?
1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3. Oh, okay. Thank you.
All the verses are relevant, right? But that's where I wanted to focus on today.
Right. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's always great to have you,
Assalamu
Shaykh Tarik. I want to say that we live in the greatest country in the world, and God bless this great America. This time around in this election, I'm very happy that Kamala Harris did not win, because on the one hand, you cannot pander to our community, and the next day say that you support, Israel's right to defend itself. I think that I have to give it up to the Christian and the Christian Coalition. They have done, and Fox News, they've done a great job at pandering to people that were not in their spectrum for voting. They went to the Hispanic community and they pandered and they said, you don't want somebody coming here stealing your jobs. You want to keep the jobs for you. They went to the Black community and said, you know what, you had it the greatest under the years of Trump. You're going to have jobs again. And they took those votes. They went to the white Americans and said, you want, your country back. You want it to be the way it was before. And they promised to do all of these incredible things, closing the border and doing all of that. They kept this up year after year after year. And they pandered and they lied so much that people believed it.
Mm-hmm.
You can just keep repeating a lie and people believed it. I believe them. I believe the behavior. I'm one that I give it up to Allah. But I have to look at history. And history has taught us after 100 million natives, after 100 million African Americans, after the LGBTQ community went through their stuff, I believe, and this is based also on what he's surrounding his cabinet with, everything that comes out of their mouth is going to be an absolute bold-faced lie. It is my belief. This is me personally. The first 90 days, things are going to be put into place. Our power is there. If they create statutes and laws that will never be able to be undone, it's going to be very difficult. I think we only need to look to Palestine to understand that our power is in law. What happened in this election has shown America the power that only 2.5% of the people in America have. You may not like us, you may not like the hijab, but our standards are those of the Abrahamic tradition. And I have to say, for me personally, especially in a community surrounded with evangelicals, I believe in their behavior. And I am personally, the way you treat me is the way you expect to be treated. I love everybody. However, there is a fine line when you demonize a certain community from the pulpits. I was a Christian for 30 years, and there's a separation within Christian churches. There's the white church, the black church, the old church, the hip church. Within Islam, one of the drawing factors is that we are all the same. No man, no woman. We're all the same. God loves all of us. And this was one of the drawing cards, morals and beliefs. But it is my belief that all of the agencies follow this man's rule. So here comes surveillance again. Here comes, stigmas on your IDs. Here comes flying, I am not of the belief that I think that this is Superman, and I'm not of the belief that I think that his party has anything but ill will towards the Muslim community. The propaganda will get worse and worse. All I hear is boots marching. I'm not, and being African American too, I have to look at our history, and we have seen this before. And I'm sorry, a little irritated. I just believe that strategy is very important. Speaking up is very important. I've been put into a position where by now I can't do anything but speak up. And in this political climate, you kind of have to stare this thing in the face and talk it down. I believe in creating bridges, Sikhs and the Shakers and the Quakers. These are founding Christians in this country who loved everybody. This brand of Christianity does not follow the tenets of its own faith. And if it marches in the shadows, and if what's around it, I'm sorry. Well, thank you. This is my opinion. Thank you.
Again, people, Muslims shouldn't demonize one another over their political positions, right? This isn't coming straight from the Quran. This isn't coming straight from the statements of the Prophet, there is room for discussion, there's room for disagreement, right? But what we can't let happen is be divided by non-essential issues when it comes to our beliefs, right? So when you hear somebody who might have a differing view over politics than you, have a conversation with them, but demonizing them as a lesser Muslim or an insincere Muslim is a strict red line. We don't do that to one another.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
It's a general question about the difference between an imam, sheikh, and mufti, and
Mhm.
what is like the degree or like qualification that each person gets to separate like one from another.
Yeah, so there isn't a clear distinction between the three terms. You'll find that different cultures have different terminologies that they resort to. But if you want to make a distinction, some have made the following distinction. A imam is somebody who leads a prayer, but doesn't necessarily have the qualifications to be a teacher of Islam. A sheikh is somebody who has those qualifications, and then exactly what qualifications are required, again, there's no single answer to that. And then finally, a mufti is somebody who has the ability to give fatwa, to give religious rulings.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not exactly like bachelor's, master's, PhD.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, questions?
So back to the point of 9/11, what exactly, because I was too young during that time to even know what was going on. What exactly led to it being pinned on, say, the Muslim community or the Arab community? Because obviously 9/11 happened more from people from other parts of the world than just the Arab community or the Muslim community. So why do you think it led to that? Was it more the media, or was it?
Well, the simplest answer is that the alleged perpetrators are Muslim, and I believe Arab. Right? There's still talk about Saudi Arabia's role in this, and apparently some of some of those who executed it are of Saudi Arabian descent. Right? So that's the primary thing. Number two, we have to remember that Islamophobia is a machine, right? It's a concerted effort. It's not just one or two people who like to bash Islam and happen to get a lot of airtime. No, there is an actual in-depth strategy at demeaning and undermining Islam and Muslims globally. And it was started by yours truly in Yahoo back in 1984. And most of these institutions that spew anti-Islamic content are founded by or funded by individuals who have ties to Israel and Zionism. So you take, for example, MEMRI, MEMRI. Right? This is an organization that claims or defines itself as an institution or organization that seeks dialogue between the West and the East. But you look at all the videos, it's all the videos that are meant to be controversial and make Muslims look bad. And it so happens to be founded by an ex-IDF individual, right? You take it like somebody like Robert Spencer, Jihad Watch and whatnot. Where does his funding come from? Tommy Robinson from the UK. He is funded by individuals who have ties to Zionism and Zionist organizations, right? So as one individual put it, about 80% of Islamophobia in the West is funded and led by
Allahu
Zionists.
Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
And again, this didn't start in 2001. It started in the 80s. But 2001 was an opportunity,
Allahu Akbar,
right, which they seized on. An opportunity, Bush took it as an opportunity to invade Iraq. But what did Iraq have anything to do with what happened, right?
أشهد
Even
أن لا
Afghanistan, right? So Bush seized on that opportunity.
Kind of tying off to what he
أشهد
said.
أن لا إله
Personally, I did go to like New York
إلا
this past summer, and I went to the memorial, the 9/11 memorial, and all of that stuff. And I was kind of like, being a Muslim, it was already like very apprehensive, like just seeing all
أشهد
of it. But there was a
أن
specific place
محمد
in the actual memorial where
رسول
they were just talking about how Islam is like Islamophobia, just things that really made it look like, this is how Islam is. This is like, it's just that the
أشهد
memorabilia that they have in that one room.
أن
I think it kind of like pushes people to like think
محمد
that, oh, this is how Islam is. And I feel like
رسول
that's a lot of also where people are testimony in that way, because when we're being portrayed as today in these like places like memorial sites, it always like shows, hey, this is how Islam is, this is what these people did, or they're from Islam. And I think it's also something that does push like a lot of that Islamophobia, because people do sit there and they look at that regardless of what religion they're from, and it just kind of like creates this idea of, hey, this is how Islam is. And I think that it still goes on today too. And this is a funded place. This is something that they paid. It's a site. So it's not like just people like from the street telling you. It's a structure, it's a museum that's being
But let's keep one thing in mind. The only reason that worked so effectively is because people don't know us. If people knew us, they're not going to believe that nonsense.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Jazakallah khair for the beautiful reminder. As you said, like we're surrounded by uncertainty, right? Especially here, and everything is just uncertain. But I want to focus on voting as a Muslim, because I've heard a lot of different scenarios, right? That some people say voting, it's good for the Muslim community. We have to vote. Some of them say, oh, they go to the extreme that voting is haram, or we shouldn't vote, or just don't vote at all. How would you, or you personally, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing, you can tell me, it's none of my business and I'm totally fine with that. But what did you do and how did you approach it, like voting in this community?
Yeah. So let's put the two extremes. One extreme are those who say voting is haram. It's forbidden. What's the evidence that it's forbidden? When you actually sift through their claims, it's utter nonsense, right? The other extreme is to say voting is an obligation, like it's an Islamic duty. You are sinful if you don't vote. That's another extreme. There's no evidence to support that. The balance is, what do the experts of our community say about voting? And I haven't heard somebody who is, their career is in this area say that voting is meaningless. There are two forms of power when it comes to voting: either the money that you contribute to campaigns, or how many votes you can get a person, right? One of the reasons why local elected officials could care less about the Muslim vote is because Muslims don't vote. Or else when you look at, for example, young Kim, in her district, right? In her district, there are 5 masajid, 5 mosques, and 4 other mosques that are within a mile of her district. Meaning there's a huge Muslim concentration in her district. But we can't get her out of office because not enough people vote. And by the way, I don't know if you're a voter, you have been getting these paper mails. Have you seen this? What is it called? The voting center institute, whatever. It tracks. I opened one of them, and it shows you how often you vote. All of this is in the system. These elected officials know exactly how many Muslims vote. They do. And it should be that a lot of Muslims vote. You have thousands of votes within a district. When you're talking about thousands of votes within a district, you mean they can easily flip the district, easily. Because congressional races aren't in the millions, they're in the maybe tens of thousands, right? If even that. But you go with this card to these elected officials, say, we have X amount of Muslims. Their response is, but you don't all vote, right? So, you know, it has weakened the community. It's made our voice weaker. Now, in terms of what I did, I'll be very frank and very honest. I voted for a third party. I voted for Jill Stein. But the reason why, the primary reason why I voted for Jill Stein is because the California vote doesn't really matter. Had I been in Michigan or somewhere else, I honestly don't know what I would have voted for. I wouldn't have voted for Trump, but would it have been Harris, or under the argument that Harris would be better for Palestine than Trump? Again, agree, disagree. That's not the point here. Or would I have even voted for Jill Stein? I honestly don't know.
Can I follow up? Is there any question? No. I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but talking about Jill Stein, right? I was also going to vote for her, but I had a friend tell me, like, how would you vote for someone who killed your own people? I'm from Syria, right? And she supported like Bashar al-Assad like for years, right?
Mhm.
So how would you address that?
Well, what I've heard from our leaders in this area is that our vote for Jill Stein wasn't for Jill Stein. It was just to send a message to the Democrats: you can't take us for granted, right? Yeah, I know some were saying if you could get, if the Green Party can get 5% of the votes, now they are by law able to receive federal funding. You break the duopoly and whatnot. She won 0.4%, nowhere even close, right? But again, the Muslims took a stand. It may have been the best stance. It may not have been. But we put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The most important thing is we don't demonize one another for who we voted for. And actually appreciate the fact that Muslims, by and large, voted for people who they thought would be in the best interest of Palestine. They just happen to see it differently, which we appreciate where they're coming from. Well, yeah.
All right, that brings it to the end of our session. Please, again, give it up for dear Shaykh Tarik Atta. Heavy topic, man, but I appreciate you covering it and shedding light on it as well. Thank you so much. And of course, to the brothers and sisters here and guests, thank you very much for taking time out. A few announcements, we'll call it a session. Number one, please don't forget the Asr prayer, late afternoon. Number 3 prayer, 3 p.m. because of the time change. So once we wrap up here, if you're able to join us, we'll be praying in about 10 minutes. Number 2, I just want to give a big shout out to, again, all the volunteers that step up week in, week out, that are helping us with our classes. Again, I want to encourage everyone, please try to dedicate at least 30 minutes or so weekly to help us out in the kitchen and getting the food and all the good stuff, coffee, tea, the prep for class ready, because sometimes it's going on just 2 or 3 people and it gets kind of difficult. So I know we all come and we enjoy class, but I also want us to be part of the process of getting the class ready as well. So please do consider that. That will be a big help for us as well. Number 3, I think everyone in front of you have this flyer. This is the MASCON LA convention. MAS is a Muslim American Society or an organization that's been around for a long time. They're having their annual convention for 3 days from November 28th to the 30th. I think everybody has this flyer in front of you. It's an all-star lineup inside here as well. We've been in contact with them, and what they're trying to do is very beautiful. They want to make sure that it's welcoming for our new Muslim brothers and sisters. So because of that, one of the things that they're doing is if someone's interested in going, they'll be offering some type of a discount. I don't know if it's 50% or something of that extent. I'll be getting the information now. So if you haven't as of yet purchased your ticket, if you have and you're a revert or you converted to Islam, let me know offline and we'll try to work on that. But again, this is really good, especially if you've never been to a convention before. If you flip it on the backside, a lot of different activities going on for the kids, for the youth, for those that are looking for marriage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really nice place for 3 days. They have hotels and all that good stuff there, the whole package. So make yourself familiar with this flyer here and this event here as well. That week, if I'm not mistaken, we're not going to have classes simply because we want you guys to experience this. If you've never been to a convention, we get to meet other Muslims from other communities. It's very beautiful, inshallah, God willing. So please do consider that as well. Number 4, And remember, there is a discount for new Muslim brothers and sisters. Just I'll try to get the information out. But if I forget, which I probably will, just remind me. Same, Sheikh Tariq, for your community as well. If there's any new Muslims or reverts that are interested in going, I'll try to get the information over to you as well, inshallah, God willing. Number 4, as you guys know, we have a big event coming up next Sunday, 1 week from today. Next Sunday here at IOC with Sean King, who's an author and journalist. He reverted to Islam. I think many of you saw him with Sheikh Dr. Umar Suleiman and UFC fighter Abdul Karim. They're going to be here at IIOC. We pray at 7:30. The event will start right after, around 8 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. There's no registration. It's not a ticketed event. Because of that, we're expecting a large turnout. So I would encourage you, if you are coming, to come a lot sooner than later, because as you know, it's always the issue with parking here because we don't have as much parking. So if you want to do that, that'll be great. Please do get the word out as well. And it's a really nice event that we'll have here as well, inshallah, God willing. Lastly, food, drinks, coffee, and tea. If you want to make something for you and take it with you, that'll be great. So this way we don't have extra leftover here as well. And we like to put a little donation box here. I want to encourage you guys to please consider donating towards the New Muslim and the Da'wah program. We have a lot of expenses. We're blessed. We want to make sure everyone has a great and wonderful experience, but expenses come with that as well. So to help us offset those expenses, we always put a little donation box here. I forget to remind myself and you about that. There's a QR code. You can scan it, or if you want to just, as we say, write a check for $1 million and drop it right in there, take that as well. MashaAllah. May Allah bless you guys. And lastly, week in and week out, we're having guests that are joining us sometimes for the first time. Today is no exception. I want to just recognize Sister Adrian. Adrian, if you could just raise your hand for us. Adrian's joining us here for the first time. It's been, how long has it been for you, Adrian, since you embraced Islam? 2 months. So 2 months. So we met Adrian here at the Friday sermon, and then I encouraged her to come to class. So today's our first session here as well. So sisters, please make sure to welcome our sister. And lastly, if I can have everyone help me out with the tables and chairs. Remember, they go on the racks. We have racks on both sides. Just please make sure they're not overflowing, the chairs and so forth. And lastly, Shaykh Tarik, as always, may Allah reward you and bless you. Always an honor to be with you as well. So thank you so much. May Allah bless you guys. We'll see you guys next week. Assalamu alaikum.